In this next chapter, I invite you to travel across Europe, the Middle East, and Africa, quite the trip, to discuss riding the wave of composable banking, moderated by Serkan Ünal, Head of Partnerships for Central and Eastern Europe at Mambu. Serkan, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Welcome to our viewers across Emea, and I'd like to welcome also Deloitte, who are over in Amsterdam, across Europe. Thank you for joining, João. Thank you for joining Sabri and Thorsten. Welcome. And as you know, we're in Amsterdam, and our Mambu headquarters is also recently moved as a headquarters to Amsterdam. I'd like to also touch a little bit upon history. Did you know, for instance, that we established one of the first European public banks here in Amsterdam in 1609, which is called the Amsterdam Bank? And what they did is actually to provide merchants that were trading in the late 16th and 17th century to be able to trade those currencies also, and also deposit them. So that was kind of the first actual banking service that was being offered for the clients here. And yeah, before we move into our questions, I would like to ask you whether you have any experience with the city of Amsterdam.
First, Serkan, thank you a lot for inviting us here. It's really a pleasure to be back in Amsterdam, such a beautiful city with long history in the financial space, as you said. And actually, this is one of the first cities I visited with my family when we moved to Europe. So very glad to be here today.
Thank you, Sabri. So talking about financial services, we know that across Europe we have many cultures, many countries, and many different habits. We have seen over the last decade that we have also gone into a trend of banks that are going digital, a new wave of digital banks that are spin up. So how do you see that trend going into bridging those gaps into the different markets? And is it becoming much easier to do so? I'd like to ask your opinion on that, João.
Yeah, thank you, Serkan, and thank you for inviting us. It's a pleasure to be here in this lovely city. It's a very interesting question because actually, when you look at European regulation, they certainly have had the opportunity in the past to try to encourage cross-border transactions, cross-border banks to open in the market. And really that has certainly been the case, like the likes of N26 and other banks that open in the marketplace, especially focused on new customers, Gen Ys, focusing on convenience, focusing on mobility, focusing on new ways of doing business at a lower cost than legacy and more traditional banks. And this has certainly happened in the past. And these banks have acquired certain levels and certain segments of the business so far, but really focused on transactions, really focused on acquiring new customers, getting a bank account, transacting across Europe. And this is already possible, and it has been possible even before the pandemic. The key question now is, how does this business then translate now into new areas of the balance sheet of a bank? How do new entrants also can capture the sort of lion's share of where the business is, which is getting into loans, getting into personal loans, getting into mortgage, getting into the corporate area? And this is the key question now. How can these new entrants actually capture in a big market like Europe?
Exactly. Do you see that also happening in your separate markets, Thorsten, Sabri?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a key topic to me, João. I completely can agree and confirm that. So to me, modern banking is a digital customer interface. That's all about it. So, and a transformation, a digital transformation in that way should always start with the customer. And talking about customers, to me, just give an example, a very interesting customer segment is the small and medium enterprises, which is very special. And now with these new modern solutions, we are able to provide spot-on solutions for exactly that customer demand, at the same time providing the solutions at a very, very low cost.
And Thorsten, you mentioned the word transformation. That intrigues me. So we see more and more banks riding the digital wave, be it to drive costs down or be it to tap into new revenue streams, gaining more market share, as we discussed already. So how would that transformation agenda help achieve that? What's your view on that transformation piece, Thorsten?
Especially in connection with Mambu and your solution, I think the customers are now more and more able to concentrate on the business and the transformation at itself, not concentrating on IT implementation. And that's, I think, a great benefit to our customers to put the right focus and to put the right focus.
Yeah, just to complement on what Thorsten mentioned, when you think about actually the discussion we have with our client, the topic is not anymore if they should transform. Actually, it's a given. The question is more about how they should execute. Because as Thorsten mentioned, like, it's really about building a differentiated customer proposition. Bank and financial institution that will not do that actually will be limited to compete on scale or only on price.
Exactly. So if we elaborate more on transformation, and when we talk about Mambu specifically, we're headquartered in Amsterdam, as you know. How does Mambu fit into that transformation agenda when you look at our composable nature of the platform? Sabri, maybe you could like to extend that answer.
Yeah, sure. We saw a lot of banks moving from in-house building solution to more, I would say, using packages or emerging solution, composable banking solutions such as Mambu. And the biggest advantage for that, it's really like a shift to more an assembly, I would say, idea and approach. And what I mean by that, if you think about composable banking, there's 3 components. So first one is really about how you could compose a solution using independent component, leveraging open API. The other aspect is about extending like features by combining different components together. And the third one is actually, it's an unlimited space, meaning that this solution could integrate with a limited number of players. And this is actually where Mambu comes to play.
Exactly. So you're actually not limited to your imagination, how you'd like to offer these banking services to your clients. So that gives you the flexibility, but also the agility to go into the future with a new breadth of ideas.
Yeah. And by doing that, actually, one last point, maybe this actually is opening a new door for implementation approach. So we are really moving from long, complex implementation program where you need to invest a lot of time, a lot of money before you start seeing any business outcome, to a more sequencing approach where you see to start like business value much faster, and also by really lowering the level of risk that will be associated to this type of programs.
Exactly.
If I can complement, I mean, if you look at banking, and if you look at what banks have to cope with nowadays, it's really a whole raft of compliance issues that they need to handle, response to regulators, a lot of stuff, and they still have a lot of legacy internally, a lot of complexity, sometimes IT departments with thousands of people. And how can you simplify all of that? And you're getting your market being eaten by new entrants, which have very little cost. They can access rapid technology. They can take leverage of the cloud. They can do a number of things that a more traditional a competitor cannot, or at least has a lot of issues internally, even to change their own internal mindset on how to do this. And this is really banks that opt early on, the more traditional ones, to take leverage of what the new technology capabilities offer, will have a much better preparation to compete in the marketplace.
Yeah. And I think we see this in all the markets, and I can confirm that for the German market as well. So I've been on this journey now, embarked on this journey some years ago, and in the past, we've been focusing on clients that can be characterized as a cloud native, cloud first. That was our starting point. But now I think we see a trend that more and more the traditional banks, the larger organization, start to embark on this journey as well if it comes to fourth generation banking platforms. And the implementation approach and how these organizations embark on this journey is somehow different to the cloud native and the cloud first strategy clients, because their approach is a kind of a slice by slice, segment by segment, product by product. It's more an amendment or an add-on instead of replacing a one by one, the core legacy system. And I think that's quite a clever approach in terms of risk mitigating, in terms of running the change process internally. So that's a huge opportunity to them.
Exactly. Thanks, Thorsten, for making that bridge, actually, because I also heard the word investment. Last year, Deloitte announced that they would develop and build out the Center of Excellence. So how has that worked out for Deloitte, especially for the customers, but also for the project execution, as we discussed, to enable that agile delivery? Maybe you could elaborate.
Yeah, sure, of course. This is a relationship we started together with Mambu a couple of years ago when we first started discussion, collaborating, and this has been a fantastic journey so far. We've established a center of excellence. We've trained more than 100 people. We've invested in assets and continue to invest jointly with assets. We've implemented projects across the globe, all the regions. And so we now have an ongoing practice together with you, and we are investing more for the future, taking the collaboration to a next level, and sharing ideas about which areas and what can we bring to the table to this partnership. So this has been a very successful journey so far. Only 2 years, so the next years will be even more fantastic, I assume.
Exactly. We're equally excited, but it will also, I think, for Sabri, for Thorsten, for your regions be beneficial. So
Absolutely.
How do you see that also in your regions?
We have seen this already in action. So we have applied all these tools, and I think one of the key aspects that we are able now to take out the migration risks out of these projects, which is a key achievement. So the tools, the assets, they are available, and we have already applied them. So yes, there will be some additional future steps where we can complement that service offering. So we will build our propositions more and more. But we have seen it already in practice, and it was a great achievement. Yeah.
Maybe just to add a concrete example. So what we are really aiming to do is really to leverage the global capabilities of Deloitte. So to João example, actually, for example, for Belgium, what we are aiming for is really to tackle the specificities of the country by building the country layer, for example.
Thanks, Sabri. So let's broaden the conversation a little bit. When talking about new banking platforms, we've seen a change of adoption. Customers are also looking into a new breed of core banking system. So Thorsten, could you elaborate how you see that evolving for the future when looking at platforms such as Mambu?
Yeah, I would say our clear vision, which is kind of a midterm or long-term vision, is that what we call platformication, so the economy of platforms, that's the future state. And if you look at that future state, the key requirement is that you are able to have a composable architecture, that you can plug things together in a very easy way. So I think the long-term vision or the midterm vision would be what we call platformication, leveraging ecosystems.
Exactly. So when we did a little bit about history in Amsterdam, I'd like to also do the leap forward. So 2030, 2040, how would banking look like from your view, Sabri? Could you kind of touch a little bit on the taste, how it would look like for the future?
Yeah, sure. So I think actually the bank of the future will be really the bank that will embed their services in the customer journey. What I mean by that is, like, think if you, for example, you need to take a mortgage. You have to interact with different people, different services, so a bank, real estate agent, and think about it really in terms of ecosystems. So I think today the technology is allowing us to really have this, I'll say, end-to-end solution and managing the customer journey like from end to end. And with leveraging artificial intelligence, machine learning, composable banking, like Thorsten said, like with this assembling of block Lego, I think we can achieve that.
And I think that, complementing on that, when you look at these sort of journeys that Sabri is mentioning, is really focusing on the customer's interests. What does he want? He doesn't want a mortgage, he wants to buy a house. Yeah. He doesn't want a car loan, he wants a car. And this is what banks in the past didn't do very well. Some banks are now doing this much better. And then taking really advantage of technology going forward. Today, we have certain access to technology. In the future, we have more innovation in technology, access to new ways of computing, for example. And this might change the way in which banks adopt new technologies going forward. And so I don't have a magic wand to understand what 2030, 2040 will look like, but certainly we know it is different from today in terms of adopting technology. And so banks need to be in the forefront of adopting these new technologies, because if they don't, someone else in other sectors will and capture business from this business. Okay?
Thank you, João, for making that a round answer. So We don't know what will happen in the future, but it will at least be exciting times. But first of all, I'd like to thank you for being here in Amsterdam, for coming over and having this discussion with us. But I'd like to also finish off with thanking our viewers in Emea. Thank you.